When Harry and Meghan found themselves backed into a corner, Tyler Perry was there, offering them more than just shelter. He wasn't merely a friend, he became their escape route from the pressures of the royal family and the invasive media. Behind the gates of his ultra-secure Beverly Hills mansion, they found the privacy they craved, the comfort they needed, and most importantly, the safety they couldn't get anywhere else. Perry offered them a sanctuary, a stark contrast to the cold walls of Buckingham Palace, where every move was scrutinized and controlled. It wasn't just about a place to stay, it was about trust. Perry didn't just open his doors, he opened his life, becoming a confidant, a protector, and even a godfather to their daughter, Lilibet. Meghan and Harry were no longer royal figures under the watchful eyes of the world. They were guests in Perry's world, far from the glare of the media, free to rebuild their lives. Every public mention of Perry, every thank you in interviews and documentaries, was carefully crafted to cast him as their hero, their guardian in a world that had turned on them. But Perry's role wasn't just about offering a safe haven. The reality of their escape was more calculated than it seemed. What they portrayed as an innocent refuge was, in fact, a strategic hub, a place where their Hollywood narrative was being meticulously planned, where interviews were rehearsed, and where the image of Harry and Meghan as victims was being carefully constructed. Behind those closed doors, Tyler Perry wasn't just witnessing their life. He was watching them craft their next big move, one PR tactic at a time. As time passed, the relationship between Perry and the Sussexes evolved, but not in the way anyone expected. What was once a symbol of unwavering loyalty and friendship soon turned into a chess game of power, control, and secrecy. While Harry and Meghan remained publicly grateful for Perry's support, behind closed doors, they were playing a different game. A game where every move was calculated and every word spoken was part of a larger strategy. It wasn't just about finding refuge anymore. The mansion, hidden away in the hills of Beverly Hills, became their personal command center. This wasn't just about escaping the royal spotlight, it was about shaping a narrative. Every public appearance, every heartfelt interview, every carefully worded statement was rehearsed to perfection. It wasn't just Meghan's struggle with the royal family that was being crafted. It was the story of two people fighting against an institution, a storyline designed to garner sympathy and create a more favorable public image. But in the midst of this calculated narrative, Tyler Perry was witnessing everything. He wasn't just a bystander. Perry was observing every interaction, every moment of tension, every strategy meeting. He saw the raw, unfiltered version of the couple, the moments of doubt, the backstage conversations about how much to reveal and who to blame, the constant calculations on how to distance themselves from the royal family while maintaining the appearance of victims. Perry watched it all, the carefully constructed smiles, the media drills, and the real, unspoken tensions behind the scenes. And somewhere along the way, the dynamic shifted. The man who had once been their protector started seeing cracks in their facade. Perry realized they weren't just relying on him for sanctuary. They were using him as a pawn in a much larger game. But it wasn't just about the public narrative anymore. It was about the private conversations, the rehearsals, and the raw footage of a life they wanted to carefully control. Everything changed the moment news broke about Tyler Perry's $260 million lawsuit from actor Derek Dixon. Perry, once an untouchable billionaire mogul, suddenly found himself vulnerable in the harsh spotlight of Hollywood. His empire, built on an ironclad reputation of success and control, was now at risk. And in Hollywood, when one person shows cracks, the ripple effects are felt by everyone. Meghan, ever the master of her public image, moved fast. She erased every trace of Perry from her social media, deleted photos, and scrubbed mentions of him as godfather. It was a complete erasure, like he'd never been a part of their lives. In the blink of an eye, the public persona they had so carefully crafted was shifted, and Perry was left in the cold. His once cherished status as a savior had evaporated, replaced by the cold, calculated distancing from a woman who was now focused solely on damage control. But Perry wasn't naive. He knew how this game was played. He had expected this betrayal, and as if on cue, buried deep in the fine print of their residency agreement, There was a clause that gave him full legal rights to share his side of the story. Perry wasn't just a passive observer in their lives. He had been a key player in their strategy, and now he was holding the ultimate card. 17 hours of raw, unedited footage. The first leaked recording was just the beginning. In it, Meghan could allegedly be heard discussing how to control public sympathy, while Harry vented his frustrations about Netflix's demands. But that was only a taste. Insiders say Perry has far more, a treasure trove of video, audio, and detailed transcripts documenting just how orchestrated their post-royal life truly was. And with each leak, the illusion of the humble, struggling couple started to fade, revealing the calculated power players behind the scenes. Now, with his wealth of evidence, Perry held the keys to the Sussexes' downfall. The tapes weren't just a record of private conversations. They were a ticking time bomb, one that could detonate at the perfect moment. And as Perry slowly begins to release them, the world's perception of Harry and Meghan is starting to crumble, piece by carefully orchestrated piece. As the tapes leaked, so did their carefully constructed world. The fallout from Perry's recordings rippled through every corner of the Sussexes' empire. Netflix, their biggest deal, suddenly found itself under intense scrutiny. The once glamorous contract, reported to be worth a staggering $100 million, was now a shadow of its former self. Numbers were revised down to a mere $20 million, and even that was in jeopardy. Executives were furious, and the cracks in the couple's media empire were widening by the day. Behind the scenes, the Sussexes were scrambling. The public-facing image of the happy, philanthropic royals had worked for a while, but the leaks exposed the truth. This wasn't just about charity or social justice. It was about crafting a narrative, about controlling how the world saw them. Their brand, carefully built through glossy interviews, Netflix series, and well-timed public appearances, was now unraveling. The authenticity they once preached about felt increasingly hollow, especially as more leaks surfaced, revealing their true intentions behind every tear and every candid moment. The financial strain was immediate and severe. Their income streams, once flowing freely from massive deals with Spotify and Netflix, were now dwindling. The Spotify deal had already fallen apart, and with Netflix reconsidering its position, it was clear that the couple's financial future was at risk. The numbers didn't lie. Their luxury lifestyle was expensive, far more expensive than their shrinking revenue could support. The $14.65 million mansion they called home was just the beginning. Add to that the $300,000 annual tax bill, $2 million for security, and an endless list of staff salaries, and suddenly their burn rate was unsustainable. Meanwhile, their production company, Archwell, was bleeding money. Donors who once supported the couple's foundation were now backing away, and donations to Archwell had dropped nearly 30%. The unrestricted grants, which could have kept the operation afloat, were dwindling even faster. The whole operation was built on optics and image control, but when the audience started to see the cracks, their loyalty started to waver. And that's when the true consequences began to hit. No one was buying the carefully curated victim narrative anymore. Meghan's much-anticipated return to the spotlight, her comeback show with Limonada Media, was supposed to be her big moment. But the test screenings bombed. Viewers weren't buying the scripted domestic goddess image. Critics called it flat, disconnected, and insincere. The disconnect between what they portrayed and what the public now saw was widening, and the damage was done. Her podcast, once meant to be a massive launch, was delayed indefinitely. The optics were clear. No brand in their right mind would want to hitch their wagon to the Sussex brand during a full-blown reputation crisis. Behind closed doors, the tension was palpable. Executives who had once lined up to work with the Sussexes were now looking for exits, while others whispered of foreclosure risks. The mansion, the staff, the luxury, everything they had built was now a house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. And it wasn't just the mansion that was at risk. It was their entire brand, everything they had worked so hard to create. The numbers told the story more clearly than any tabloid headline ever could. Harry and Meghan's lifestyle, one that seemed to radiate wealth and prestige, was now starting to crumble under the weight of its own unsustainable opulence. What was once an aspirational brand, rooted in philanthropy, high-profile deals, and a life of luxury, was now rapidly becoming a cautionary tale in the entertainment world. The grand mansion they called home in Montecito, which cost them a staggering $14.65 million, was no longer just a home, it was a financial liability. The mansion itself wasn't the only beast devouring their funds. Taxes alone on the property were a hefty $300,000 a year. Add to that the round-the-clock security costs, a growing staff payroll, and the luxurious upkeep that was expected of their high-profile status. And suddenly, the money that was supposed to keep them afloat was draining faster than they could replenish it. But the real kicker? Their income streams, the ones that had once promised a golden future, were drying up. The Spotify deal, a major source of income, had fallen apart after the lackluster performance of their podcast. The partnership with Netflix, which once promised hundreds of millions, was now facing a severe cutback. Netflix executives were furious over the poor content performance and the weak viewership numbers. The golden deals they had secured with some of the biggest names in media now seemed more like a fleeting moment in time, gone as quickly as they had arrived. Behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. Staff members were quietly being let go, and high-ranking PR strategists, who had once helped shape their public image, were being downsized. It wasn't a strategic repositioning, it was a frantic scramble to stay afloat. The Sussexes were no longer in control of their narrative, they were now reacting, trying to manage the fallout from a story they couldn't stop. Their production company, Archwell, was bleeding money. The donations to the Archwell Foundation had dropped nearly 30% in a single year, and the unrestricted grants they relied on were shrinking even faster. This wasn't just a temporary setback, it was a signal that the public and potential donors were losing interest in the couple's mission. What had once been a movement was now just a brand struggling to keep its head above water. Investors who once saw the potential of their brand were now pulling back. Industry insiders were starting to whisper about potential foreclosures, about late payments, and about the rumored turnover of staff at their mansion. The empire they had so carefully built was unraveling at lightning speed, and there was no one left to prop them up. The question wasn't how they could rebuild, it was whether they could survive the collapse. It wasn't just their finances that were spiraling, it was their entire public image. Once hailed as the ultimate power couple of modern-day royalty, Harry and Meghan's brand had been carefully crafted for global adoration. But as the cracks in their carefully curated story began to show, their once stellar PR machine now looked more like a broken-down vehicle struggling to gain traction. And the fallout? It was swift, unforgiving, and entirely self-inflicted. The Sussexes' public-facing projects, once hailed as groundbreaking and filled with potential, were now falling apart one by one. Meghan's much-hyped return to the public spotlight, her lifestyle show, With Love Meghan, was supposed to mark her triumphant comeback, an image of grace, sophistication, and personal growth. But when the test screenings came in, the response was brutal. Viewers weren't buying it. The soft-focused domestic goddess angle felt insincere, even bizarre. Critics called it flat and disconnected, as if the show was too polished and too far removed from reality. It was a public relations disaster waiting to happen. The show's failure wasn't the only blow. The podcast, which had once been considered a major win for the couple, was also stalling. The much-anticipated launch, initially set to take the world by storm, was now quietly delayed. Officially, it was due to timing issues. Unofficially, industry insiders knew the real reason. No brand wanted to hitch their wagon to a project connected to the Sussexes during their growing reputation meltdown. No one wanted to be associated with a couple whose every move seemed calculated, inauthentic, and increasingly controversial. And then came the ultimate red flag for any high-profile public figure: the toxicity label. Netflix, the streaming giant that had once showered Harry and Meghan with millions, was pulling back. One partner reportedly dropped a project after hearing about what Perry might leak next. Another investor flat out refused to touch anything associated with the Sussexes. In Hollywood, where perception is everything, the Sussex brand was quickly becoming radioactive. Their attempts to control the narrative had failed. They no longer had the luxury of carefully picking and choosing their words for the media. Now, they were reacting, scrambling to put out the fires Perry's leaks had ignited. And with every new recording that surfaced, the walls they had built around themselves began to crumble faster. As the leaks continued to unravel the carefully spun narrative of Harry and Meghan, one undeniable truth began to emerge. Tyler Perry, the man they once trusted as their protector, was now holding the ultimate mirror to their carefully crafted empire. In a world where controlling the narrative was everything, Perry wasn't just an observer. He had become the one person who could reveal everything, raw and unfiltered, for the world to see. The story of Harry and Meghan's escape from royal life was supposed to be one of triumph. A modern-day fairy tale where the couple carved out their own path in Hollywood, free from the shackles of the monarchy. But what was once a carefully constructed dream now looks more like a nightmare. And the final twist no one saw coming? Tyler Perry, the man they trusted, is the one who might just be the one to bury it all. For all the power, privilege, and media attention they enjoyed, Harry and Meghan's empire was built on a fragile foundation. Their entire public persona was constructed around one thing: control. Control of the narrative, control of their image, control of how the world saw them. But now, that control has slipped away, and the man they once relied on for safety and sanctuary is the one who holds the key to their undoing. Perry didn't seek out this war, but in the face of betrayal, he's become a master of timing, waiting, calculating, watching as the Sussexes scramble to salvage their crumbling empire. What Perry holds in his vault isn't just a collection of footage, it's the raw, unfiltered truth behind everything Harry and Meghan have presented to the world. And as more tapes leak, the damage is becoming irreversible. It's not just the lawsuits, the financial collapse, or the PR disaster. It's the realization that the couple has lost the one thing they once had: the trust of the public. No amount of media training, no carefully curated statements, and no glamorous interviews can undo what's been exposed. As the dust begins to settle from the chaos, one truth is undeniable. Harry and Meghan's fairy tale escape from the royal family was never meant to be a simple story of freedom and independence. Instead, it has become a glaring reminder of how quickly the illusion of invincibility can shatter. What was supposed to be a fresh start in Hollywood, with new deals, new opportunities, and a chance to control their narrative, is now looking more like a ticking time bomb. The grand mansion in Montecito, once the symbol of their newfound freedom, is now the anchor dragging them down. The glitzy Hollywood lifestyle that they so carefully curated is crumbling under the weight of unpaid bills, sinking deals, and a reputation that is rapidly deteriorating. The quiet retreat that they once thought was a sanctuary has turned into a prison of their own making. No one, not even the media that once adored them, is buying the story anymore. Tyler Perry, the man who once provided them with safety, privacy, and a platform for their narrative, is now the harbinger of their downfall. With 17 hours of raw footage in his hands, he has the power to expose everything. Every strategy meeting, every calculated decision, every moment of manufactured emotion. Perry's silence is now their biggest enemy. He doesn't need to release it all at once. Each leak, each new revelation sends shockwaves through their empire. The public is no longer buying the polished image they've been selling for years. And so, as the curtains fall on what was once a carefully curated story of triumph, we're left with one undeniable conclusion. In Hollywood, no one is immune to the consequences of losing control over their own narrative. Harry and Meghan, the couple who once seemed destined for a life of influence and adoration, now face a future filled with uncertainty. Their rise was swift, their fall even faster, and in the blink of an eye, the dream they fought for is turning into a nightmare they can't escape. The power they once wielded, both in the media and in the hearts of their supporters, is fading. Every new leak, every fresh revelation, further dismantles the polished image they had spent years building. Tyler Perry, once a trusted confidant, now holds the key to their destruction, and every piece of evidence he possesses only serves to prove one thing: Harry and Meghan weren't just victims of circumstance. They were, in many ways, the architects of their own downfall. The silence from Perry is deafening, and that silence is the most dangerous weapon of all. His timing will be everything, because when he does finally choose to release everything, it won't just be another scandal. It will be the end of their carefully controlled empire, a reminder that in Hollywood, loyalty can only be stretched so far. The final chapter of Harry and Meghan's Hollywood story is yet to be written, but one thing is clear: it won't be the story they wanted to tell.